AskReddit by Electrical Lemon 187. What's the most disturbing secret you've discovered about someone close to you? The amount of comments highlighting sexual abuse is grossly disheartening. I hope those who survived such things find healing in the midst of piecing things together. An uncle beat a guy almost to death with his bare hands. He had walked in on a friend molesting a kid. He had to pay a fine and do community service for a long time, but also didn't have to pay for beer at the local bar for a few months. He was so reserved and kind, so it threw me when I found out what he'd accomplished in his younger years. There are 3 things all wise men fear: the sea and storm, a night with no moon, and the anger of a gentleman. The reason grandma moved away, when my dad was still a baby, to a big city, more than 3 days away from her family, was because she stabbed her stepfather and almost killed him. It was a very small village. Later she told me he was a rapist. She didn't elaborate on that and I didn't ask any follow-up questions. She ended the convo with "I did the right thing." We never met her side of the family. I almost did the right thing. An inch to the left. I found out that my aunt, who was 13 at the time, was raped by her uncle, my great uncle, and had a baby in a cellar in the basement of her house. The baby didn't make it, so she and her little sister buried it there. Years later, when the aunt, who had repressed those memories, had a baby, she remembered it all. When her family found out, she was labeled the slut of the family. My dad's side is garbage. JFC your poor auntie. Give her a hug from this internet stranger. A work colleague appeared on the front page of a national newspaper for a life of fraudulent qualifications. He claimed medical and law degrees, was a brigadier in the Army Reserves, and was the CEO for a major Heath fund. He actually was a brigadier in the Army Reserves, but that and the Heath Fund role were largely built on the fraudulent qualifications and a progression of jobs also based on these claims. In reality, the only qualification he actually held was as a mortuary assistant. Not even his wife knew. The fraudulent degrees had been gained when he was in the Army Reserves recruiting and he had access to submitted position applications. He came undone when he applied for a government job and some flags were raised by the recruitment people. He tried to withdraw the application but didn't realize that an application for a government role has the same weight as a statutory declarate. The absolute fucking balls to apply for government work while spinning these lies. My grandmother was married for over 50 years and never saw my grandfather's penis. Why do you know this, lol? One of my best friends was caught trying to meet up with a 13-year-old and was filmed and uploaded to YouTube. Was he by chance going to get a cupcake? That my mom cheated on my dad for 20 years and still hasn't told him to this day. I'm still trying to figure out what to do and how to go about the situation and exposing the truth about her to my dad, but I'm afraid he would die of a broken heart. Worst thing is, she cheated with my godfather, who used to come to the house and drink coffee with my mom and dad every day. As a kid who found out that one parent was cheating on the other, there is no good time to tell them. My brother, 14, and I, 18, both discovered that our dad was cheating on our mom separately and kept putting off telling her for over a year because it was Christmas and then she had a business trip and then it was her birthday and then it was this and then it was that, etc. One day, I got in trouble and my dad said, "You're a disgrace to this family," and out flew the words that he and mom were not prepared for. I know it's hard. I know it will change everything if you tell your dad or confront your mom. Just wanted to give you some solidarity. I was pretty close with my youngest uncle growing up, at least in pictures. He was in his mid-20s when I was like 5 for context. One day when I was in middle school, he just stopped coming around completely. My entire family told us kids that he was backpacking around the nation. In high school I was going a genealogy project on my grandfather, his dad, and accidentally found my uncle's name on the sex offender registry. Come to find out he was running a CP ring and had served 16 years in federal prison. He's out now and my family pretends nothing happened. I stay far away. Wait, when you say my family pretends nothing happened, do you mean that he's back at family gatherings and stuff after being released for CP? My uncle was arrested for a cold case rape murder from 1972. He always seemed like a nice guy. Shot himself in the head right before sentencing. https://www.cnn.com/2020/1110/1010-killing-terrence-miller-dies-index.html. Wasn't this a Forensic Files episode? I'm pretty sure it was, and that I just watched it like 2 days ago. A former friend of mine from childhood was a youth pastor at a summer church camp. Turns out he was grooming young girls and teens both at camp and online after camp was over. Only reason I found out was back in 2011. He was in his late 20s at the time. One of the girls told her parents and the cops posed as her online while he masturbated into a webcam. The cop then convinced him to drive 3 hours to go meet and hook up. When he showed up at the girl's place in the middle of the night, the cops were waiting and arrested him. He's now a convicted sex offender and did time in jail. The crazy part? Once he got out, he moved to Texas and married a divorcee that had kids. He's also now the dean of online studies at his church and is responsible for growing the number of students taking classes online. When I was 17, I dated someone who told me when he was drunk that not only would he probably hit me one day, and just wanted me to be prepared, but he also used to rape his little brother. Every now and then I remember that moment and it just floors me how dangerous that kid was. What the fuck? That went from horrible to fucking terrible pretty quickly. Found the scrapbook of my mom and a guy I didn't recognize from her immediately post college days. Turns out he was a long-term boyfriend of hers who killed himself when she broke up with him. My grandfather found his body. I learned at age 20 by finding the book Shrine to him. I'd say 20 is probably on the low end of good ages to learn this fact, if you must. When my grandfather passed away, we discovered that he did not exist. His name was not in any government registry. He was a normal citizen, paid taxes, had a license and everything. Lived a long life, married to my grandmother for over 50 years, had multiple children, everything normal. And X200B. Still to now, no one knows who he really was and why he had a false name. My 2x great-grandfather had fake records. He lied on every census, each one was different. His military papers and other records all say he was born in different places on different dates. He lived in Virginia but was known by the family as the Austrian. Nobody knows why he was shifty about his origins. 1865-1937. My mom received birthday cards with money in them for years from her parents. She kept the cards with the money in them, saving to buy a piano sentimental reasons. My sister, who has repeatedly stolen from family members, found the collection of cards money and took them. My mom only wanted the cards back when she realized what happened. My sister denied everything. Fuck you, Emily. Yeah, fuck you, Emily. The kid that bullied me in grade 5 and amp 6, turns out his father was molesting him and his brother throughout their childhood. I looked up all my bullies. They all have extensive criminal records. I shudder to think what their home life was like. I found out that the reason why one of my uncles didn't want to go back to Korea when he retired was that he couldn't. He was fearful for political reprisals if he tried to return. Turned out his brother was part of a group that assassinated the Korean president back in 1979 and his own innocence was never proven, so he was in fear of getting arrested if he ever tried to go back. H Seoul %2 C %20 South %20 Korea. Not even using a burner account. What a mad lad. Met a super nice guy at a networking event when I just starting out in tech. He had a ton of connections and was a nice family man. Super rich. Eventually we became friends and he was acting as a mentor figure to me in the industry. Went over to his massive new house, met his family, etc. He had the demeanor and looked like Al Borland from Home Improvement, to give you an idea. Like 4 years later I was looking at the sex offender registry map for my local area while I was shopping for houses. Lo and behold, his house popped up. In the early 2000s he was convicted of co-running a commercial child porn sales site. Served 5 years for it in federal prison. Only 5 years for distribution, that's fucked up. After my husband died in 2020 I found out he had been having an affair with a 30-year-old. He was 55. She apparently aborted his baby. Everything he told me about his prior life was a lie. Second marriage for both of us. And he had been having sex with men since he was in his early 20s. To sum it up, I didn't know this man at all. We had been together 10 years and married for 6. Wait. He was having an affair with a woman, got her pregnant and having sex with men too? Where do people find this kind of time? My great-grandmother was married to 3 different people at the same time. The men were from different branches of the military. She was collecting all 3 of their paychecks at a time. Is your family sure who your great-grandfather is? I wasn't close to this person but I did hang out with them a few times. The best man at my wedding had another really close friend who turned out to be a serial killer. It messed him up really badly. He already had mental health issues and this sent him over the edge. I can't even talk to him anymore. I miss you, man. So sorry to hear about your friend. Something similar-ish happened to one of best friends in middle school. He was friends with 2 brothers who also had an older brother. My friend and the 2 brothers were planning on having a sleepover at the brother's house but last minute changed it to my best friend's house. The older brother and his friend ended up murdering the parents, but not before the dad stabbed and killed the friend. They lived directly behind him. One night as a kid I heard my parents having an explosive argument in their bedroom which suddenly went quiet. The door was closed and locked. I found out during a drunk phone call from my mother it was because she attempted to shoot my father in the face with a .303 but it didn't go off when she pulled the trigger as there were no bullets. They were both horrified and just stared at each other apparently. They are still together. With a .303? Like a Lee Enfield rifle? WTF, your parents get in a fight and your mom's first thought is all for Queen and country. When I was young I had vague ideas about my uncle being dodgy. In that at family events such as weddings etc my parents would tell me and some of my cousins to stay away from him. When I was in year 8 we were doing a lesson in citizenship class where we had to cut out pieces from a newspaper, no idea why, and I came across an article saying he'd been recommitted to Broadmoor prison. Went home and googled him and found out he'd been in prison in the 80s for kidnapping and raping someone, and had been in and out of prison since for other offenses. He also tried to sue the Sun once for defamation since they printed something incorrect about him. He was awarded 1p by the court because it technically was defamation, but it was agreed that what they had printed couldn't have damaged his reputation any further. All I know is that he was in a halfway house for a long time. However, from what I've gathered he was released around 5 years ago. Tragic and horrifying story all around, but the 1p judgment due to his worthless reputation is the best court story I've heard in a while. My brother was stealing money from father who had dementia. This went on for a year and I found out about it was because the bank who had my father's mortgage called me wondering why it hadn't been paid in 6 months. My father's bank account went into the negative around this time too, and when I confronted my brother about it he said, well, I gotta pay my bills. I was about to take control of all the accounts and make sure shit got back on track, but my father ended up in the hospital and died shortly after that. My brother also stole some of my inheritance too. In the end, he stole over $5,000 from his dying father. I have a brother actively stealing money from my parents. He's a do-nothing, a liar, and a stoner, and my parents are huge enablers because they don't want to be mean. So they let him steal even though they know about it. They confronted him once and he said, "Calm down, it's not that big of a deal. Dementia runs through my family. I'm honestly expecting to get zero money when my parents pass because my brother will have stolen it all and spent it on drugs and video games and KFC." My mother got very drunk one day and confessed to me that my father raped her and that's how she became pregnant with me. Empathy. My mom told me the same about my bio dad. They were married, but it was still rape. I wish I didn't know. My coworker lets her dog hump her leg every morning till he releases while she has her coffee, which has stayed with me since I heard it. I can't think of anything else when they talk to me. The shit some people admit, man. Graduated boot camp and wondered why my brother wouldn't talk to me. Turns out he was fucking my ex while I was there instead of delivering my letters. Guess guilt ate him up and he thought it was simpler to keep up the lie and not have a brother. Right up until an old friend from my hometown told me what happened. What happened next? My girlfriend was estranged from her sister for years and never understood why. They patched things up when their dad got sick and needed help. One night they had some drinks and the sister started ugly crying, telling my girlfriend she had something to tell her. But she never got it out. Same sitch as yours, I'm guessing. She probably slept with my GF sex. Son who poisoned his sick father while in hospital. Months later he went camping with his wife and returned dough from a knife accident. She took the inheritance and married his cousin. Sounds to me like she may be behind both deaths. I found out when I was an adult that my mother didn't just abandon me one day after work like I had been led to believe. Turns out she had been gang raped. She said they took her wallet and made a disgusting comment about my picture inside. I would have been a toddler at this time, and she was just too scared to go home. She said they followed her. She said when it was over and my stepdad took her to the hospital they had to stitch everything back together down there. She spent that time away on and off the psych ward. My mom and me still have a rocky relationship for reasons beyond this, but I definitely understand her better. She's